Instead of doing a full review, I'm going to assume that everybody has already seen the first look at the 2019 NVIDIA Shield TV that I did a while back. Put a link up in the corner here. If you haven't, go watch it, come back, and pick up here. So this slide should look very familiar. I've kind of left it pretty much the same as in the end of the last one. And we're just going to work off of it to talk about the things that make the NVIDIA Shield TV good, bad, or whatever. So the first thing there is that I'm still not totally sold on the form factor. Obviously, this is a personal preference thing, but I'm not sure that I like the cylinder look. Here's a photo of the Shield TV, the 2019 Shield TV, matched up against a 2017 and a 2015 Shield. I think maybe I'm just can't get my mind out of it, that mindset, but I'm just not in love with the cylinder. I think I probably would prefer to have the Pro's body. But of course, the good thing here is that because of the form factor, it's pretty easy to hide it behind the TV and not have to look at it. One of my concerns around the form factor was that it wasn't going to dissipate heat properly, but that hasn't been the problem. I haven't had any stability issues. It does get still warm to the touch around 43°C by my recollection at times at different places in the device, but I haven't had any stability issues, so I'm going to just say that it's totally fine. There's nothing to worry about when it comes to the stability or heat dissipation ability of the 2019 Shield TV. Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos, both bit streaming, which worked on the older one, and now decoding work with the 2019 Shield TV. Atmos is limited to stereo decoding only, which was a pretty big letdown for me. But since my receiver supports it, I wouldn't actually use it. And I guess I can understand why they might have it be that way. But I think it should just, if you have the channels, decode it and let it go. And then either let the TV, if that's what you're using, or the receiver sort it out on its end. Still very much meh about the AI enhanced upscaling feature. I think it's pretty lame. I just don't see the value of the feature. It does something, and here we have an example of the Big Buck Bunny sample from tons of years ago, where on the left we have the basic upscaling algorithm, and on the right we have the AI enhanced. And as you can see, it does look different, but which side is better? AI enhanced is a little bit sharper, but is sharpness the ultimate goal? Or is there something else that we need to take into consideration when we're talking about what makes picture quality better? To me, it seems that where it sharpens, it over-sharpens. And sometimes you get wonky artifacts in the mix because of that. But I guess it's one of those things that if you like it, turn it on. If you don't like it, leave it off. If you can't tell the difference, which in most cases I am pretty indifferent to it, I would just leave it off. And it's not free either. And when we talk about power, we'll see the difference here, but it's about 5 watts that it costs you to turn it on. That said, perhaps the biggest problem with the feature is that it just doesn't work with very much content. The only content that I found that it works with is actually 1080p 24, and not any of the content that really needs to be upscaled, like your broadcast television, 59 or 60 hertz, DVDs, which are actually 24p underneath the VA or underneath the menu layer, and nothing works with it. It's all unsupported. And that is incredibly frustrating because that's the content that needs to be upscaled. Not that I actually watch that much of that kind of content, but that's my personal preference. If you have a lot of DVDs or a lot of older files that aren't 1080p 24, it would be nice if you could use the feature to, if you like the way it looks, to use the feature to get better looking content while you're viewing your files. But it just doesn't work. And of course 4K, it just tells you that it doesn't need to do it, which is right. It doesn't generally need to upscale 4K or UHD content, and that's fine. The first run buttery smooth. I really appreciate this. I know I mentioned this in the first look, but it was just so smooth. It's worth pointing out again. Now is as good time as any to have a quick word about power consumption. I couldn't quite bottle this into a graph, so we're going to just do a slide here because it varies a lot. The standby is a pretty consistent 1.7 watts, but when it's on or when you're doing other stuff, it fluctuates so much that finding a proper average is just too difficult to encapsulate in a graph. So we're just going to talk through it real quick. When it's on, you're not really doing anything, just driving through the menus. It's usually about 2.4 to 3.1 watts, with my guesstimate of about 2.8. Netflix UHD content 4.8 to 6.1 while you're watching it, but when it starts up, you see a massive peak at about sometimes up to 13 watts. Voodoo, very similar but slightly higher, I imagine, because the bit rate is higher. Kodi UHD content, high bitrate content, it's 4.3 to 4.5, which is very constant, but I saw some stability issues. And then with Plex, using the same content, was 3.8 to 5 watts during that very high bitrate UHD content. If you turn on AI enhanced upscaling, it adds around 5 watts to whatever the number is here versus the basic upscaling. I did have some issues with Plex during the initial setup where it just had some wonkiness, but I haven't seen any of those issues again while playing with the application. Plex just works. Music works. High bit rate, like super high bit rate, UHD, local content, plays back fine. It flips the resolution. It is brilliant. It's just the way that I want it to work. It works. Kodi, on the other hand, I've had all kinds of just weird issues with it. Music, it plays it, but the volume, the levels, just seem a little bit off. And I've played with the different settings in there. I'm just not sure what's going on. And you can hear the difference when you play a music file in Kodi versus a music file in Plex. And even if you listen to the same file streamed MP3 from something like Google Play Music, it just doesn't sound right. Now, I'm willing to accept that this might be some kind of weird configuration issue that I just haven't figured out yet, but I've also seen a problem, or literally not heard a problem, with the audio not starting up when I go to play a file, whether music or video, from Kodi, where it just gets no audio. The way to fix it is just to exit the application. Generally, you got to play something else and then go back into Kodi, and then I'll get either bit streaming or decoded PCM. The occurrence of it happening is much less likely when decoding content or decoding the audio codecs, but it still happens sometimes. So it's not isolated to bit streaming, it just happens less frequently. I've also seen some buffering issues with that very high bit rate UHD type content where, and this is a gigabit LAN, it's not my network. I promise you it's not my network. And it just gets buffering, and it breaks the cinematic experience to the point where I just don't like to watch video in Kodi right now. And hopefully this is something which is a teething problem and they sort it out. But for now I'm just using Plex. Also worth noting, and I don't think this is unique to the 2019 NVIDIA Shield, is that deinterlacing controls within Kodi, you can't turn them on. So interlace content doesn't look great. The price, I think, is about right for what this device is. It is, in my opinion, the best streamer and local media playback device that you can buy right now, hands down. Now, there is a discussion, is the Pro versus non-Pro. Pro has a couple features that might be useful to you, like you can run a Plex server on it. It has slightly more recording. I think the GPU might be slightly better. But for what I'm using it for, I don't think that I would use I would need the Pro. And while I suggested that I might go out and get one in the first look, I haven't run into any scenario where I felt the need to, where I felt limited by my choice with the non-Pro version. And so I would buy that one again. And when it comes time to replace the 2017 Shield, should it need to be replaced at some point, I'll probably pick up the non-pro one as well, unless it's just like a curiosity thing. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hopefully this was useful to you. If you have any questions, you want me to test something, please, put that down below and I will get to it as soon as I can. Cheers.